Hello, Renegade Marketers. Welcome to the 300th episode of Renegade Marketers Unite, the top-rated podcast for B2B CMOs and other marketing-obsessed individuals. What an exciting milestone. It's been such a privilege and a pleasure to talk to some of the brightest CMOs and B2B thinkers over the last 5 years. To celebrate, we're going to be looking back at the top 10 episodes since episode 200. Here's how we'll do it. I'll give a brief introduction of each episode, then we'll play an insightful clip from the show itself that you can and should apply to your marketing ASAP. To hear the rest of any of these episodes, we've shared links to all of them in the show notes section on renegade.com. Okay, let's dive in. First up in our trip down memory lane is episode 265 with Amy Massano of Altair, Tony Clayton-Hine of EY, and Bill Strotterman of GS1, who are putting the chief and chief marketing officer every single day at their organizations. This episode is filled with unique insights into the different paths to leadership and all kinds of tried and true ways to inspire employees and organizations to greatness. Here's a clip where Amy, Tony, and Bill share the best leadership advice they've ever been given. Let's start with Amy.
To me, listening is the biggest thing. You don't have to be loud to be a leader. You don't have to be an extrovert to be a leader. Be yourself and bet on yourself, I guess, is a good one too. You can, if someone else thinks you can do it, you should think you can do it too.
Has there ever been a moment where you didn't trust yourself? Like you said, I'm not ready for this job, and you talked yourself into it?
Of course. I mean, every time I've ever gotten a new job or a promotion, I always have that little self-doubt, bad guy, good guys on my shoulder. I just take the chance. I guess I just go back to what I said. If someone else believes that you can do it, you got to give yourself the chance. And you know what? You learn from failing. The old cliche is true. If that very cliche quote, if you don't reach for the stars, the moon or whatever, you won't get it, but you won't get dirt. I'm messing up that quote, but something about just try. What's the worst that can happen, I guess?
It's funny. That's a Leo Burnett quote. And it was that, if you reach for the stars, you won't come up with a handful of mud.
There you go.
And I'm inspired by Burnett because he started his agency I think at 60. But the other thing I remembered that I wanted to add to this conversation was, and Tony was talking about this, which is the notion of listening. And the famous ad guy, Bill Bernbach, used to carry a little sheet up in his pocket that said they might be right. And it was about input he was getting from the client. He was one of the most creative individuals in the history of advertising. And he carried that note just to remind himself. Okay, Tony, best leadership advice you've ever been given?
My favorite is always assume positive intent, right? That idea that in the marketing world, people are generally trying to help, and it may come out in a funny way, in a rude way, in an unbelievably strange way. But if we assume that it's positive intent, both on the people we deal with as well as the teams and then inter-team dynamics, it has served me well for a very, very long time.
Assume positive intent. I have to say, I remember literally a 7th grade science teacher who said, I know you're going to be great in this class. And it's like, I had no idea I was going to be great in this class, and I was really not. And he happened to have my older brother who was a really good science student. But I actually did well because he expected it. And so I love that notion of assuming positive intent. Okay, Bill, best leadership advice you've ever gotten?
Yeah, I think in terms of like growing as a leader, leadership is more of a commission than it is a position. If you think about kind of early career, you're sort of reaching for the stars, and a lot of that feels more like the level. And what people often don't understand is sort of that what comes along with the commission of leadership, and that's all of the the people management, the culture building, and the things that are not specific to the function that you're leading. It's kind of a lot of the other soft stuff that frankly, that was a big learning curve for me from when I was just starting to where I am now. And so it's more of a lived piece of advice in addition to sort of, I think, just general advice that I've gotten over time.
Listen, assume positive intent. Leadership is a commission, not a position. These are great guideposts for all current and aspiring leaders. This is especially true for a CMO in their first 90 days, which brings us to the next on our top 10 list, a play-by-play for the first 90 days with CMOs Johnny Smith Jr. of Encompass Health, Julie Feller of Care Medics, and Dave Bornman of Association Analytics. This episode is a fantastic deep dive into how to get quick wins while gearing up for the long-term success. At the end, I asked each CMO to share their final words of wisdom for fellow CMOs in their first 90 days. So let's hear what they all have to say, starting with Johnny.
Be patient. I think that's key. That was for me, is to be patient and know that this is a journey. And there's going to be many victories and wins along that journey. And when you get to those victories and wins, make sure you celebrate those that help you get there. And those are usually the people that you work next to.
So even if your boss isn't patient, you better be. I love that. All right. Julie, one final word.
I don't think I could say it better than Johnny, but here's what I'll say is talk to and learn from as many of your new colleagues as you possibly can, and external colleagues as well.
External. Okay. And Dave.
I'm big on the sales channel as a source of information. And what I say that I did initially is not just talk to the sales VP and not just interview or talk to the sales reps, but something the pandemic made much easier is participating in sales calls, even as a silent observer. Be on as many calls as you can, not just with the best reps. A lot of times they'll want you with the best reps to hear what they're saying, but be on the call with the average reps and even the underperforming reps, because that's where you can really hear, again, where the rubber hits the road. How is the messaging working? How is that demo going? How's that sales presentation working? And when you ask the questions, you can't always get it articulated in a way that's useful. But when you're on those calls and you do, let's say 20 of them, you start hearing things that are trends that can really help inform you as you go back and start putting together your plan or adjusting your plan or adjusting your messaging. So talk to the sales team all the way down, up and down the ladder.
So there you have it. The first 90 days are so crucial for CMOs looking to bring about marketing-led growth at their organizations. Now, the CMO who joins a purpose-led organization, an organization believes in the power of brand, has a head start. Because one of the most common challenges for CMOs these days is justifying brand spend, as many see it as fluffy and only care about demand generation. For anyone you know who doesn't believe in brand purpose, send them the clip from this episode with Stephanie BUSCEMI, recorded shortly before she left her position at Salesforce.
The purpose of the company is that business is a platform for change. Our purpose is that we can be, our success is only through our customer success and through our communities in which we serve success. So the overarching is business as a platform for change, and then how that gets expressed across how do we make our employees better? How do we make the communities in which we serve better? How do we provide innovative technologies that make the world a better place across every facet? One of the things that we have as a program, again, it started 21 years ago, was the 1-1-1 model. Which is 1% of our time, 1% of our equity, and 1% of our product every year we give back. And that 1% of our product, we're giving to nonprofits, to companies, to make their businesses successful. those numbers were really small when we started. Those numbers are really huge now. So when you think about 1% of our time, we have 54,000 employees today. Everyone in the company gets 1 week off of what's called VTO, volunteer time off. And it's not optional. It is your responsibility. And we have a huge ecosystem of things that people can do, and people can bring new things. We don't prescribe. We want people to feel an affinity for the way they're giving back. But we create that space that we can give 54,000 people times seven business days a year. It adds up of their hours back to volunteer work. That's just one example of our commitment of giving back.
Yeah, I remember 111, and I thank you for reminding me that. I can hear a lot of CEOs, particularly at, say, PE-driven companies or private or VC-backed companies, saying, yeah, that's a luxury that a #1 market share market leader can afford. How do we sort of convince these or tell them that this isn't a luxury? This, in fact, drives employee morale, customer loyalty, and pipeline all at the same time.
Yeah, one immediate thing that comes to mind is I would start with saying, have they truly looked at the next generation of workers, and have they really, do they deeply understand millennials? Because I could bury them in numerous studies out there that say millennials are not going to work for, nor are they going to buy from companies that don't have a higher purpose.
Right.
And so this next generation expects it. And so it's not a luxury, and it's not optional. And I'd also say, Salesforce didn't put the 111 model in place years into its success. It did it from day one when it was very, very small, and it's grown with the company. So I would appeal to any CEO that says it's a luxury and say to acquire and grow great talent as this next generation of workers, and to acquire and build lasting customer relationships, you're going to have this. It's not optional. It's not going to be enough just to have great products and services anymore.
It's not enough. Your brand needs to stand for more than simply the products and services you provide. This brings us to episode 255 with Airtable CMO ARCHANA AGRAWAL, who grew her marketing team from 4 to 45 in 1 year. Airtable was growing just fine without marketing. So why was this a priority for the brand? Here's ARCHANA. If the company was growing that well without marketing, what was driving growth?
A very, very strong word of mouth motion, right? And I'm not saying that that's enough to maximize the growth that could be had, but it's certainly something that we would always hope to have as part of our motion, and always hope adds fuel to whatever marketing we end up doing. The idea of actually having people come try out your product, see the value, be able to not only add much more value to what they're doing, but then enough for them to actually go and champion the product and talk about it to others is sort of a very, very large word of mouth flywheel, if you will, that helps propel the business forward.
And so that's sort of that moment where, you get the unaware of marketing individuals say, well, just build a product that's so good that it will sell itself. And if we have a freemium ability, it'll even be easier. So why do we need marketing? Because we have freemium. So why did they decide that they needed marketing?
A couple different reasons, but I'll also address the idea. It's also, yes, it's not only a product that's so good, it's truly a product that's remarkable, that someone wants to remark on it. And so I choose that word in terms of actually saying that it is something that adds so much of value that a user would feel compelled to share the benefits that they've been able to get through the product with the circles. But it's also a very horizontal product, right? I've seen, so many different use cases for marketers who use Airtable, to product teams, to IT teams, SMBs, large enterprises that use the product. And being able to help them understand what's the best way, partnering with them through the entirety of their journey. It's not just about acquiring a customer, but it's actually helping them get to time to value in the quickest possible way. Being able to be their voice back into the product teams, to be able to say, hey, we've had so much of success. This is the blueprint that we'd like to actually productionize so that so the next marginal user can actually achieve success that much faster. Those are sort of all the reasons to go and think about how do we actually be able to do this in a more programmatic way.
Let's put a punctuation point on that. It's not just about acquiring a customer. It's about helping them get time to value in the quickest way possible. That is what marketing-led growth can do for your organization. Now, how can you help shift your organization into this new perspective? We're going to bring back Johnny Smith Jr. of Encompass Health, who made it on the top 10 list twice. We had a really in-depth conversation about change management for episode 233. And in the upcoming clip, you'll hear Johnny talk about how to show that marketing is essential to success.
As we continue to implement the change, we had to be very deliberate about all of our allies across the organization and being mindful of when is the right right time to implement X? When should we implement Y? Because as you can imagine, this is the first time that we've brought together a strategic marketing department. So, we as marketers, we're aggressive, we're hungry, we're ready to go. You have to be deliberate. So I spent a lot of my time reflecting, thinking, and engaging with different leaders across the company to ensure we're making the right moves at the right time. It's precision, man. This is a precision and a precise process, because you can easily screw this up if you don't talk with the right people and be deliberate with your approach.
And I'm so glad you said that, because it just reminds me, a lot of what you described in this process, you can do in isolation, but we all know that marketing doesn't work in isolation. You have all sorts of dependencies, and it only works if the whole organization embraces it. And really, the head of marketing has to build those bridges and has to make sure that that you're seen as in service. I mean, it's funny, the transformation that you're describing, you went from order taking to still being in service of other departments. But the difference is you had a plan, you had the right people in place, and now you could suddenly deliver on a level that could have a material impact on the business.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is just a brilliant playbook, and I feel like we've covered tremendous ground. Is there any sort of lesson learned? So we've talked, besides the fact of reaching out, is there any other lesson learned that you have that sort of this particular experience really drove home?
I will say this. As a part of the change management exercise that we went through, the key to all of this is that you're focused on the customer, but the second piece is to know your business. Truly understand. Healthcare is a complicated industry. It's important to truly understand the business, and then where can marketing make an impact? Where can we make an impact to actually help grow the business? That's a key element that I think all marketers have to focus on, regardless of what B2B space you're in, because that wasn't the focus initially with marketing in the past. We started asking different questions. We started getting access to data. We started spending more time with our controllers and financial operators. We started to be a part of those discussions, and folks were like, wow, marketing now is contributing to growth. It's a different conversation now. And then from there, then you start to get invited in different circles. And then the field and others start to respect what you're doing because you actually are caring about what the end goal is, as opposed to just responding to a tactic and implementing.
Marketing is contributing to growth. If you want to earn a seat at the table, you need to be thinking about the shortest distance between you and your contribution to growth. To get non-marketers to buy into marketing, you're going to need to have some numbers to back you up. Next up on our top 10 list, listen to Univar Solutions VP of Global Marketing, Rob Whitney, as he describes what metrics matter most and how he's locked arm in arm with sales to directly tie value back to marketing.
The one thing I did early on when I came into the business was put a bottom line dollar figure measurement on marketing activity. That is often the hardest thing for us as marketers to do, and to do it with credibility in a manner that the business actually believes the number you're presenting. But I realized very quickly, at the time it was at Nexio, we were a 4.5% EBITDA business. I'm not going to walk in and say, give me 10% of sales, to drive marketing, right? That's a non-starter of a conversation. So I had to build measurements in place that directly tied value back. So each of our industry marketing managers actually has a gross profit number they have to deliver to every year. And so that was kind of number one to get credibility. Now we're kind of doing in reverse of what most marketers do. Now we're starting to go earlier in the funnel and judge earlier in the funnel behavior, more to inform us on how we can get to that gross profit number, but also to educate the company so they understand why getting earlier in the funnel, earlier in the sales cycle matters to help our account managers out there in the marketplace. So most of your typical stuff around engagement scores, conversion rates, those types of things are starting to come into, kind of harder measurements for us.
And so I'm going to work backwards from gross profit, because gross profit is interesting. I mean, it's what kind of customer did you sell into? And there are customers that will squeeze every last inch of profit out of you. How long did it take to get that customer? What's the lifetime value of that customer? All of these things sort of factor in, and marketing is one aspect of it. So how did you sort of zoom in on how does marketing help deliver that? Because it's right. I mean, it could take 20, there's customers that just getting in the door. I mean, you had so many proof of concepts, and you could have a pilot that went on 9 months. And by the time you finally got it, everybody's forgotten about, oh, this was a marketing generated lead. I mean, where do you see marketing play a role in this? And I also imagine, and this, correct me if I'm wrong, customer success and customer growth is a huge part of this too.
Yes, very much so. So we got there by being very purposeful and taking small bites at a time, right? So really focused in the beginning on what are subsets of customers we think we can convert fast. The beauty of our business from a marketing standpoint is I have a big multi-billion-dollar commodity business that's very transactional. Got a multi-billion-dollar specialty business where some of our sales cycles, especially in food and pharmaceutical, are, a year and a half, 2 years long, right? So the easiest thing to do was go focus on the transactional, build the engine for the transactional. And we spent about the first 2 years doing that and really honing in on a methodology that the sales team believed in and could say, yes, marketing helped us deliver that. And then I used the sales team to go out there and be the advocates for marketing as a function and organization as we started to build the capability to focus on the more long-term, specialty-driven business cycles for the organization. And so now what we've done, on the back end, we tag every opportunity that comes in, existing customer, new customer, so that we can track it. We have some agreed upon methodology that the business has signed up for. And then when we now present what marketing is going to deliver from a gross profit standpoint, it's both myself and that business leader going together to the executive team and saying, yes, marketing needs X amount of money for our industry, and it's going to help us deliver Y amount of growth. And I found by being able to do that, lock arm in arm with the sales leaders, I have significantly more success than I ever did walking in on my own going, this is what marketing can do for you, you know? So turn the business into advocates for you, and it becomes much easier.
So insightful. If you, the CMO, are walking in and representing your budget without sales or somebody on a line of business, you're making a big mistake. You really are, flat out, because your numbers, what you're basically saying is marketing is independent, and it's not. Marketing is only as successful as sales is successful, period. Next up is the most downloaded episode of the last 200, episode 229 with Ran AVRAHAMY, the CMO of AppsFlyer. Ran shared the secrets behind AppsFlyer's rocket growth success, and this one is key. If you want to be successful, you need to put employees first. The power of engaged employees is tenfold, but don't take my word for it. Here's Ran. I want to zero in on employee pride for a moment, because I think in our pre-call we talked about you really only have one metric in the company, at least and that's from an employee standpoint, is do they feel proud of it? How do you actually measure that?
We have our surveys, right? Our internal surveys, and we ask team members, I think twice a year, and we measure that, and we do some sort of NPS about that. Actually, the numbers we see are outstanding. I think the last one was around 97% of people at the company felt that they are proud of working for AppsFlyer, and that's outstanding. And you ask yourself, okay, so if 97%, how higher can you go? But you can go higher. You can go to, there's 100. There's always room for improvement. But I think, again, it's a lot about the small stuff that you do on an ongoing basis with our employees, right? And for example, we don't call, there's a lot of talks about employer branding. We don't do employer branding. We do employee branding. We spotlight them. We provide them with small, meaningful, personalized. It's not about gifts or anything like that, right? It's about showing them that we care, showing them that we work together. Every time that we have a big milestone, we celebrate it internally. We do an internal training about it, and we give people assets to share on their social media. And I think it was in the last funding round we had, our entire LinkedIn feed of people in this industry was filled with AppsFlyer people just telling their own personal story and how they are proud of the company, right? And people asking me, like, do you pay them? Do you incentivize your team members to share that? And I'm like, no. We provide them with a platform, with content, visuals, talking points, stuff like that. But they do their thing, and you cannot trick that. It must be authentic. You cannot pay for that.
Yeah, it's so true. And, most companies think about, from a marketing standpoint, the priority is acquisition, then retention, then employees, if they think about it. And of course,
no. It has to start with employees.
And talk a little bit about that. Help me, because this is like a paragraph in my book. Why is it so important that marketing needs to focus on employees first?
It's such a good question. We actually have a person in the marketing team. He's our head of thought leadership, right? And his job is to help everyone who wants to learn become a better storyteller, a better writer, tell his own stories. And they're like OKRs specifically, we need to help 60 people this quarter write at least 5 LinkedIn posts, right? And at the beginning, people were like asking, why do you do this? Why do you have a headcount for that? And it pays off so much, because the importance of marketing for being internal first, if your own team members are not your biggest advocates and biggest fans, you won't be able to make your customers and your prospects and your partners and the external circles your fans. First of all, and it's this fandom sticks, right? It's contagious, right? if people working for the company are so damn proud of your products, of your social responsibility, of your actions, of your content, it glows outside, and it's contagious. I don't have any other word than contagious.
Let me repeat that. If your own team members are not your biggest advocates and biggest fans, you won't be able to make your customers and your prospects and your partners and the external circles your fans. This is why employee culture is so important. LTI CMO PEEYUSH DUBEY shared in episode 269 that their employees are all united by Shoshin, which means the beginner's mind in Zen Buddhism. As PEEYUSH explained, we believe that in a beginner's mind, anyone with a beginner's mind will be able to solve many more challenges than someone who is thinking like an expert. Here's how Shoshin got LTI's 40,000 employees excited about LTI Canvas, a new product they released in response to the pandemic. How did you bring this to your employee base and get them excited about it and frankly, get them trained on it?
That is, and actually, Drew, this is where I think I'm glad we started this entire, this section or this response with the whole idea of Shoshin. Because that is a philosophy which is deeply ingrained into everybody at LTI. And the way that we think of it is that gone are those days when any one of us could complete a graduation and then build a career. As in, this is a constant learning process. Every year, every month, we have to keep challenging ourselves to learn something new, and that has kind of helped us in getting new, especially in the area of technology that we are in, introduce new concepts, introduce new offerings, new products, and have our employees also take them. So we have several internal communication platforms that we used to share with them a very simple communication of how it will be done. We have an internal training module, which is also completely digital and is being used on the computers and mobile platforms, where we launched training modules for LTI Canvas for all our employees to go through as well. Equally importantly is also, even though there's the sales enablement and sales communication, because these are the executives who would be talking to our customers and prospects about LTI Canvas. And so we created a separate series of communications just for our sales team, for them to be able to explain this entire thing. And the way we do that is through three things. One is to read everything themselves. One is learn, then is to present to customers, and then to send. So learn, send, and present. So across these three categories, we created the entire sales kit for our sales team and for our development teams through our internal learning platform, the small training modules that is how we executed the entire LTI Canvas.
So in case you couldn't tell already, there's a lot stacked on the modern CMO's plate. It's a lot more difficult to be effective if there's too much going on, which brings us to, in my opinion, one of the most important lessons of the last few years. It's time to do less, better. Here's 75F CMO Dave KOERNER with the framework you need to simplify your marketing.
If you skip past the tactical stuff, which I think is easy, and move up, kind of bottom to top on the CATS framework. The other thing we do is we cut. So the only way that this is possible, the only way we have money to spend on an ad is we cut everything. We cut out a lot of agencies because I think there's some slack there. There's a lot of performative work. That's unfortunate. We cut our blog almost completely. During the pandemic, we had no blog. Because we decided to launch a webcast. At peak, I think there were 30,000 people that viewed a webcast. And that was a huge undertaking. Everyone on the team was involved. Live shows, are very painful. We had some spectacular failures figuring out how to run a live show. And we kept losing guests, of course, and during COVID time. So super high stress. Wouldn't recommend that to anyone. And then we shut down all our social pages. I mean, we had a reasonable Facebook page, but we can't compete with Siemens or, they have social media experts, SVPs of social. So let's cut that right away. And so just cut. We use a 2x2 framework. It's pretty straightforward. Just where can we prioritize? And then as a marketer, I think I have to make sure I have the time and space to make those cuts. And when I start doing that, by the way, and I've done this at a few organizations, you come in, you have this bold vision, and then you say, the only way we're going to pay for this is we got to cut a lot of stuff. They say, well, then what's left? Like when you cut all of our display and you cut our social and we're not doing retargeting and we're not using our agencies anymore, then what are you going to do? And that's where you have to have some creative tactical ideas that you're pretty sure have a reasonable chance of working and move that way.
I love this. And the first chapter in my book is Clear Away the Clutter.
That's right.
And it's a mindset thing, but it is also all the stuff that you do. And we see this whether it's in tactics. Oh, well, we have to do that and we have to do this, or we see it in personas. Oh my God, we have 12 personas. We need to develop creative for all 12 personas. And what you have in most marketing plans is peanut butter, just spread all the way up there and nothing right. that does cut through. You mentioned 2x2. Just what do you mean by that?
A 2x2 framework where you are measuring impact versus effort on axes, and you're looking to get in that top right corner, and you can't increase the impact of something while simultaneously reducing the effort of that something. So you take your key marketing initiatives and you kind of drop them based on size. And then you, our blog's not working. Are we going to spend more time trying to make this blog good when across town we can see from LinkedIn they have 23 people in their newsroom producing world-class content? Or are we going to say, let's find a way to win with no content, and maybe customers don't even need content? And if they do, maybe we shouldn't be the ones producing it. Can we have enough humility to recognize that we're not going to change anybody's mind on the future of smart cities or the the advantages of IoT? And that 2x2 framework helps you determine: do you reduce the effort in something, increase the effort, increase the impact, or reduce the impact of that something?
Unbelievable. And I want everybody. I'm gonna put a huge thing on this. So we spent the last 3 months of CMO huddles, so that's 12 plus huddles, talking in various ways about what I call digital fatigue, which is just that everybody's doing exactly the same tactics. Exactly. So you talked about display ad, they're doing SEO, they're doing content, they are doing webinars, they are doing virtual events, and often they're doing the same kind of a virtual events. And so as we sort of round out 2021 and really putting down stake, what could we do differently in 2022? The simple answer is less, better. And that better bar is defined by any number of ways, whether it's just doing it bigger, but also doing it more creatively and doing it differently. So I think that you're just way ahead of the curve. Obviously, the whole roots of guerrilla marketing is sort of making up for lack of budget with ingenuity, which is kind of what you're really thinking about and doing. But I think there's more to it than simply that. And I think that some big brands are afraid of making big bets.
Right.
And
most marketers would rather be wrong inside the normal range than right outside of it. You go back to your executive team, your board, and you say, hey, look, we're optimized for display. We're doing everything we can on Facebook. We produce 3 blog posts a week. Like, what do you want from me? I've done everything. And of course, Renegade Marketing is not that way.
Now, last but certainly not least, let's look at the 10th most downloaded episode from the last 200. Episode 210 with 6 Senses LATANÉ CONANT. In the clip we're about to play, LATANÉ shares her approach to the unique challenge of marketing to marketers. Let's listen.
I think there's two things that we have been very thoughtful about in terms of marketing to marketers. The creativity, which you mentioned, and that it is appreciated, and we get to push the envelope on it. And we have to, because they've seen it all. They've seen every swag catalog. They've seen every event pitch. They've seen, so they know it, right? So creativity, it does stand out. And it also somewhat attracts marketers because they kind of want to see what you're going to do to learn for themselves. What was your CAB customer advisory board like? Because I'm going to take notes because I want to be part of your CAB, don't get me wrong, but I also want to maybe pick up some tricks along the way. So for sure, that has been an important aspect of Six Senses brand, and our philosophy is to, push the needle and be bold, and that's just who we are. I would say, though, the other maybe more important aspect is marketers can sniff bullshit. They know bullshit because they're spinning their own stuff. And so one of the things that we've also been very, very thoughtful about is being very practical, less theory. So very practical about how to get things done. Very, very, you called it drinking your own champagne, but we're the prove it people. Like, we will prove it to you. Like, I don't advise doing anything that I haven't done myself. And that's really important. Most of our thought leadership content originates with something that we have tried and tested. And we're not going to write about it unless we've tried and tested it, and customers have tried and tested it, and it's really a best practice. So that's like a big part of, I would hope, what you experience when you work with Six Sense, is that kind of no bullshit, very practical, not theory. We're in this with you. We're doing it with you, testing, learning, and totally fine to admit when things didn't work too, because you learn more from your mistakes.
There you have it, folks. The top 10 episodes since episode 200. It was great to revisit these conversations with some of the coolest cats of marketing, CATS being the acronym for courageous, thoughtful, artful, and scientific. To sum everything up here in a neat little bow, when it comes to your marketing strategy, it's time to be courageous, to prove marketing's value, to prioritize employees, to bring value to your customers, to develop healthy, thriving brands. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, do me a favor and give us a 5-star review and hit me up on LinkedIn. Always love to see your comments. And remember, if you have a question you'd like me to answer on this show, send an email to me, drew@renegade.com, or leave it on my LinkedIn. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.